you doing?
Great. How about you?
Outstanding. It's nice to have you here. Thank you for coming. Thank you for making such impactful work. I want to ask to you, Ms. Draper, first, you had a TED Talk where you discussed greenlighting, and you talked about what greenlighting was. I think the audience could benefit from hearing your take on what greenlighting yourself means.
Very good question. The TED Talk was called Greenlight Yourself, and it was actually about the ability to find in yourself to do something you've actually never done before and not wait for permission to do it. So I made this film 4 years ago. At the time, I was the vice president at an ad agency, and to try to create a film of this magnitude that required so much research on the weekends and at night and on vacation seemed rather daunting, but I had to really dig deep and greenlight myself to say, yes, you can do it. This was my second documentary, and find the right people and the right team to be able to do that seemed in some ways impossible. But greenlighting yourself is saying, yes, I can do this. I have the wherewithal to do it. I have the talent to do it. But also, there's not a construct that's created for me to actually to succeed to do that, but you don't think about that. And you create your own construct and your own path to completion. A lot like those athletes, I imagine.
Absolutely. Okay, and I wanted to ask Ms. Barnes, so for us who don't know, for us future filmmakers and filmmakers, what is the line producer's role, and what are some things that you were involved in with this film?
So a line producer on an independent production is a little bit different from a line producer on a studio production. Mainly on a studio production, they oversee the budget, they hire the below-the-line crew, and pretty much manage getting the production completed on time. But on an independent production, you do whatever needs to be done. So, it goes from managing the budget, doing fundraising, putting a team together, hiring the crew, hiring the gear, getting people from point A to point B, getting people fed, jumping in, doing marketing, doing emailing, doing anything that needs to be done, pretty much.
And this film was well produced, obviously. It looks great. So how do you
Projector may have been a little overexposed, but I'm just saying.
How do you convince people to fund an independent film? What does that look like? How does that conversation go?
Well, it varies. Everyone has a different path. On the very first film that I made, it was completely self-financed. This one, we started doing crowdfunding, and that yielded a small fraction of the budget. And then I went to a pitch festival for the Southern Documentary Fund, and that yielded a magnificent executive producer along with Blair Underwood and some self-financing as well, and a lot of the team just really working not at the rates they would normally charge. So that's kind of what it looks like.
That's good information. You mentioned Blair Underwood. How did he get involved in this project?
Lacy sent an email to some random email she found online, and it actually was his. And so we were actually coming from somewhere else, and the phone rang, and it was him, and we thought it was a joke, and hung up on him, and fortunately, truly. And he dialed again, which I don't know why, but he called us back and said, we were disconnected. And we're like, yeah, we were disconnected. I don't know how that happened. And we pitched him. We sent him the trailer in that email, and he thought the subject matter was compelling, and it was a story that he'd never heard of, and he wanted to be involved. Plus, his father was a lieutenant colonel, having served in the military for a very long time, and Blair was born in Germany, so it resonated with him. So that's kind of why he became involved, and he was the kind of executive producer that wasn't just about lip service. Obviously, he narrated the film; you can hear his voice. But he wanted the film to be seen at festivals, and he participated, and he was very gung ho about being a part of the team. So that's great. So we have like a little surprise video. Mm-hmm. Can we show that?
I believe we can.
Olympic Pride, American Prejudice is a story of 18 African-American athletes who defy Jim Crow and Adolf Hitler at the 1936 Olympics and win hearts and medals of the entire world.
For those who don't know, there's a documentary first entitled, same title, Olympic Pride, American Prejudice, that Deborah Draper wrote, directed, produced. It's her baby. and she was kind enough to invite me to narrate the documentary.
And what was really interesting to us is throughout our education and our knowledge, we knew of Jesse Owens, but we didn't know that there were 17 other African American athletes who had participated in the 1936 Olympics, including 2 women, Tidie Pickett and Louise Stokes. When people read Olympic Pride, American Prejudice, what I hope they take away is actually the spirit and the character of those 18 African American athletes and Olympians. They were not represented in their country as first-class citizens, but they represented their country. They rose above oppression. They rose above institutional racism to really strive and do something for themselves, for their community, for their country, for the world. They created a springboard for civil rights, and I want everyone to know it's possible, that we all get to contribute something for the betterment of our community, our country, and our world.
And that's the beauty of doing a book and putting it in book form. You can really do a deep dive and really explore and analyze the history of these people and who these individuals were. You can do that somewhat in film, but to do it in a literary way is incredibly powerful.
You know, I think the biggest thing that prompted us to want to bring Olympic Pride, American Prejudice to the forefront is hidden history. These are literally hidden figures in sports, and it's really, in a lot of ways, sad that a lot of history disappears and a lot of African American history is intentionally or unintentionally not brought to the light. And I wanted to write the book to inspire people to think about their role in their communities and how they will ultimately have a legacy, big or small, but how that legacy will affect the people, the places, and the things that they leave behind.
The world in which we're living right now, the political discourse in terms of our systems being challenged, our governmental systems being challenged, our norms being challenged, all of that resonates now as it did in 1936. To fight for other people to see you as human and of worth and of value. This is why these 17 athletes went over to Berlin in 1936 during the Nazi Olympics, the Berlin Olympics, to fight not only for their dignity back home in the Jim Crow South, but also on the world stage in Europe during the Olympics. So there are a lot of corollaries to what's happening now.
These athletes weren't just athletes. They were symbols at a seminal point in history of what you can do when you use your skills, your intellect, your talent, but most of all, when you use your courage. That's the first time I've seen that, actually.
Okay. It looks great.
It's the first time I've seen that, so thanks for playing that.
Absolutely, it looks great.
So that was Blair, and we found him, and he became a part of our family and our team, and actually helped usher Simon & Schuster to make that a book. So you guys, that's hot off the press. I hadn't seen that before, so that is the new book trailer for the book. So thanks for playing that, Raymond.
Okay, so I heard you say that it took you 4 years from research and actual production of the film to create the film. I'm interested to know, how do you know when the film is done, when you're complete, when it's a finished product?
You know, it's an interesting question because it's probably in my head, never done. But, you know, we started this film and we were butting right up against the Olympics. So that said, you're done. It's 2016, the Olympics are happening, and we knew we had an opportunity to go to Rio with the film. So we needed to be done prior to the 26 Summer Olympic Games, which we were. So we were able to show the film in Rio, in Brazil, prior to the games. So that was pretty exciting. And coming out of that, that's how we were able to work with the White House to bring the families from the 1936 Olympics literally to the White House. So it's pretty remarkable because those athletes were not allowed to go in 36. So 80 years later, their families were able to go to the White House.
Round of applause for that.
Pretty. So we wanted to be finished before the Olympics.
You had a hard deadline, pretty much.
It was a hard deadline.
Absolutely. So what's next?
What's next? There's lots of fun things next, but probably the biggest thing is a book called Coffee Will Make You Black, which, oh, there's fans out there. Love that. So I read this book in college, and it stuck with me, and I always wanted to find the woman, April Sinclair, who wrote this book, and I never could find her. So the producer of the film, John Norris, was able to find her, and we were able to option the book, and John is partnered with Tate Taylor. They make up Wyola Films. Tate directed The Help and Girl on the Train, and they challenged me to basically adapt the script, and I was like, I totally can do this, which again, I'd never adapted a book before, but I was willing to give it everything I could, and I did. And they loved the script, and they presented it to Octavia Spencer and Gabrielle Union, and that's how the project came together. So it's going to star Gabrielle Union, be produced by Octavia Spencer and John and Tate.
I know we're all excited about that.
We are very excited about that. It's a coming-of-age story set in 1964, from 64 to 68. It culminates with the right after the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King. So imagine Stand By Me and Lady Bird with black girls. So that's what it is. It's fun.
Well, I want to thank you both for making such impactful and important and informational work, and for coming to Morehouse and bringing this film to us. Thank you so much.
Thanks for
Give me a round of
hosting us.
applause.
Yes. Were there questions?
Yeah, were there any questions?
Any
Anybody?
questions? Yes.
Okay. The mic is right here on the aisle.
We can bring it to you if you're unable to get up. Yeah, I see.
Checking. My name's Jonathan. Deborah,
Hi.
I love
Good.
the film.
Thank you.
I just had a question. I wanted to know, once you decided that you wanted to make the film, you did your research, you had all your ducks in a row, but before you actually pulled the trigger, how did the final film different from when you closed your eyes and kind of imagined the film in your head just before you started?
Well, you know what was interesting? The final film is slightly different from what I had imagined. I didn't realize that we would discover that Jackie Robinson's brother was on this Olympic team, and that Tidy and Louise even existed, and that Avery Brundage was the president of the AOC in '36, the president of the IOC in '68, and that Tommy Smith would actually be a part of this film because he was connective tissue between the two. Because in '36, when Jesse Owens was removed from the American Olympic Committee because he didn't want to run anymore, just to be running for Avery Brundage. And then in '68, when Avery Brundage kicked Dr. Tommy Smith off the team for putting his fist in the air, I didn't know all those pieces would connect, right? I didn't know that Chase Manhattan Bank was connected to Avery Brundage, which was connected to the war bonds, which was connected to President Roosevelt. I had no idea about these pieces of history. So I think that's probably the biggest thing that changed. I thought we were making a documentary about some guys that were running track at the 1936 Olympics. I didn't know anything about anyone other than Jesse Owens. And I also didn't know that it would be so difficult to actually find out about the other 17, like their families, their backgrounds. There wasn't like a straight line from the USOC to them. So it required a lot of forensic research, a lot of concentric circles. So I didn't know it was going to be that much investigation to find 18 people who ran on an American track team. So.
Very interesting. And my follow-up question is, how important is discovery and being surprised and finding those challenges, for better or for worse? How important is that when it comes to filmmaking?
I think it's critically important. Thank you for the questions, first one and second one. I think it's critically important because if you want to, you can't put just such a tight lid on the filmmaking, or a tight construct that you aren't willing to discover things, and you aren't willing to be wild, or you aren't willing to be curious or follow the lead and discover that, you know, Jackie Robinson, 10 years before Jackie was his brother, and how important was that? I often imagine in my head that, you know, Mac and Jackie, this didn't happen for real, but I imagine this in my head, that, you know, that they would be sitting like you and I, and Jackie would say, man, I don't know about integrating baseball. This seems like a really big deal and a hard challenge. And Mac would say, dude, seriously? I ran in front of Hitler and won a medal. I think you can do this. So this is how this went in my head. And you have to be open to allow yourself to discover these stories and be inspired by them. Yeah.
What amazing insight. Any more questions?
Congrats on all of your accomplishments.
Thank you.
You hear about a lot of books. You hear about a lot of books becoming movies, but usually not the other way around. can you tell us a little bit more about how you went, or how you got the call about the book opportunity? And I have a follow-up after that.
Certainly, thank you. Thank you for having an advanced galley copy of the book that I don't even have, so that's great. We love journalists. So yes, generally the book happens and then a movie happens, like with Coffee Will Make You Black. In this case, we did a film. We went to Europe, we went all over the country, we did a lot of research, and it's, you know, we made the film. It was long enough, but there was so much other things we couldn't include. A lot of the early lives of these athletes, a lot of some of the complicated connections that we wanted to really dig into a little bit deeper, like Avery Brundage completely fascinated me, and I was obsessed with the fact that he was in the Olympic movement for so long, and he not only touched these athletes, but he touched John Carlos, and he touched Tommy Smith, as well as the 1972 Olympics as well. So he made a hard, harsh decision in '72 as well. So I was fascinated with that. So we spend a little bit more time with that. And we really get to see a bit of the urban migration, right? Because you've got these 18 athletes, some at Marquette, some at Berkeley. How do African-American boys and girls from the South get to where they got to in the first place? How do they end up Tuskegee Airmen? So we wanted to follow the trail of the great urban migration to figure out how you get from Cairo, Georgia, as a sharecropper, which Mac Robinson's mother was, all the way to Pasadena, owning a house on Pepper Street, sending your boys to UCLA, and getting them on a track team. So we wanted to understand a little bit about the parents and about the kids and about the decisions they made that led up to 1936, and also a little bit of the politics around Germany and America. And who knew what? Did we know that there were concentration camps being built when we took our visit to Germany? What did we write in the report? We didn't see anything. So we thought that was an interesting thing, so we wanted to dig a little bit deeper and look at what was really happening in Berlin and Germany at the time. We spent some time looking at Leni Riefenstahl. I'm fascinated by her as a female filmmaker in the 30s, and her ability to get that close to Adolf Hitler and to spend so much time doing propaganda films. So, you know, contextually relevant things that impacted 18 black kids being in Berlin, Germany in the summer of '36.
Thank you. My other question is, what were well, maybe you could give an example of something that didn't make the film.
Well, I think that's part of what, like, their entire childhoods didn't make the film. So we get a little bit of a snippet about their childhoods. But we learned that Mac Robinson and Jackie Robinson, they were a little gang on Pepper Street, and they caused a little trouble back in the day when they were like 9 and 10 years old. And there was a reverend who were like, these kids are so talented, and spent some time talking to their mom and said, hey, I think Jack and Mac might be good athletes. You think? And so this is a distinct turning point in how they actually got into became athletes. Because think about it, these were kids that were born in Georgia. Mm-hmm. They were born in Cairo, Georgia, on a plantation. Their father left the family. Their mother, in the cover of darkness, put them on trains, all 5 of her kids, and took them to Pasadena. So at the time, you know, and that was about 1918. So at the time in Georgia, if you got on a train and you were headed north or you were headed west, the sheriff could come get you and take you off the train, because what that meant was the labor force for South Georgia was being reduced. So she was able to maneuver with 5 kids, one of which was a baby, get on a train and make her way to California. So I was fascinated by that. So that's one of the stories that didn't make the film, obviously, but that's in the book. And then one of the other stories, just fun stuff about, like, so Ralph Metcalf was a congressman, right? We know that. He wrote the resolution for Black History Month. You guys read that. And But when he was young, he was in this really cool jazz band called the Calypso Cats. So that didn't make the film, that made the book, and that was a ton of fun. But what also didn't make the film, he enrolled in law school at Marquette too. So that didn't make the film. He was like super talented and like a real big jokester and prankster. So a lot of their little jokes and pranks that aren't in the film made the book.
So
You're welcome.
we have time for 2 more questions. Just come up to the podium. Try to talk into the mic for me. We had some problems with the audio.
Hi, my name is Kristen Watson, and I thought the film was absolutely excellent. And as a fellow filmmaker, this was very inspiring. I know you touched on it a little bit, but could you talk a bit about the process of putting all of the pieces together and securing all of the interviewees for the documentary?
That was very interesting. So we used every possible resource we could. From, like Deborah said, we called the USOC and we were like, oh, can you send us a list of people who were on the 1936, well, specifically the African Americans? And they said, huh? They were like, we didn't keep track of people by race back then. I was like, really? They said, but we can send you the entire list and you can call the list and pick out the names. Well, obviously, the names weren't obviously African American names, or, you know, they were like Fritz Pollard. I skipped over Fritz Pollard because I'm like, that's not a black guy. So and we circled back and like, okay, maybe Fritz Pollard is a black guy. And then just the boxers. The boxers are really hard to track down. Just going through Golden Gloves, they didn't keep records. Going through U.S. Boxing, they didn't keep records. So we just went through the newspaper resources on the African American newspapers. They were very helpful. And they had articles of the trials, the boxing trials. And so reading all the articles, we saw the guys that lost, but we thought only the guys that won made the team. But actually some of the guys who lost made reserves. So there was one guy, we were all the way in Berlin and didn't have the 18th name. So when you saw Mr. Fritz Want, when he opened his autograph book to that particular page, Willis Johnson was that guy.
And we're like, wait,
Yeah.
we've been looking for him for 2 years. Yes. And this 97-year-old German has this in his book. And we couldn't even believe it. And then finally we were like, Willis Johnson.
I heard Deborah screaming from inside the
You were
Olympic
up-
Village, and I'm
Yeah.
like, what's going on in there? She's like, Lacy. She's like, we found him. And I was like, oh my God. And then we all started crying. Yep. So
it was kind of really surreal because we were literally in the 1936 Olympic Village. So those interviews were in the village, and his interview in particular is in the boxing gym, which was totally, random. It wasn't by design. And here comes this older gentleman on his cane, and he's speaking German. I speak no German. And Katja, our production assistant, was translating for us. And he was like, he has this little book. And we're flipping through the pages. And this little boy at 12 years old managed to get the autographs of all the African-American athletes. And we thought, jackpot. But we also thought, wow, how cool is that? What does that say about humanity? That says as a little 12-year-old boy, he wanted to meet these guys because he thought they were heroes, and he loved their ability to be athletes and to be gracious ambassadors for peace and diplomacy. So that's when we started crying. We cried the whole day. Female filmmakers, what's really great about that is as you're vulnerable and you do let the story take you where the story goes because you want to know and you don't necessarily need to manhandle the story. Let's figure out what's going to happen. Who knew this guy would have this? I didn't even know if he was going to show up. So, and the gentleman before him, what's his name, Lacy? The one with the eyes out sweater.
Warner
Nope.
Beast.
Not. Yeah, Werner. Yeah, so he was a Nazi youth. So, so Katja was like, okay, he's coming. I don't know how this is going to go down. I didn't tell him you were black. He's former Nazi youth. I was like, I'm pretty charming. We'll see how this goes. And he was a really interesting man, and he explained to me very carefully and in great detail why he chose to become a Nazi youth. and from his perspective. And I didn't interrupt. I wanted to understand, because part of understanding history and part of understanding the future is understanding people and their choices. And he explained for him and his family, it was about the extra clothes, the extra food, and having access to things he would not have had, because he would have been ostracized had he not made that choice. So, you know, we accepted that, and he accepted that I was African American, which was good, because we were going to have to do this interview. And then the second time I screamed, Lacy, I know you remember this, I'm interviewing him, and this is 100% not in the film and will never even be in bloopers, but nor is it in the book. You know, I asked him what was it like being in the Nazi youth, and he stands up and starts singing this song. I have no idea to this day what he was singing. All of a sudden, security comes from behind. I don't know where they were hiding, but all of a sudden, this was in the stadium, the Olympic Stadium security comes, and they're like, he cannot sing that song. And we're like, we have no idea. And so they had to shut that down. We thought we were going to get shut down. But they explained to him that that song is no longer allowed to be sung in Germany. So we don't know what song it was to this day, but that was an experience that we can't separate from this project.
Wow, what an exclusive.
Yeah, it was crazy.
All right, can we give another round of applause?
Thank you very much.
One more?
Thank you.
Yes, go ahead.
Sorry.
Hi, I'm Ron Thomas. I'm director of the Journalism and Sports program. So I really...
Lovely to meet you.
Oh, same here. And I really enjoyed the film. It's terrific. I just wanted to ask, I once wrote something about one of the Olympians. His name was Woodruff, right? John Woodruff. And I can't remember what it was, but there was something special about his race. Maybe he fell during the race and had to catch up. Can you...
Yes.
Do you know that story?
He did not fall. So what John did, you know, it's 800 meters. John took off, then John slowed up, and the competition got in front of him. Then he took off again, and then he was leading. Then the competition got in front of him again. And then when he was bored with the race, he just flat out sprinted the rest of the way and won. But so they thought along the way that he was losing, but that's how he ran the 800. You know, he run. All right, you guys, do your thing. Okay, do your thing. And then he flat out sprints like a 100-meter sprinter. You know, in the last maybe 200-300 meters, he's like running like nobody's business. So he runs a really weird 800. He did not fall. That's just how he ran it.
Oh, okay, because I remember he had to come from behind.
He came from behind like 3 times. And then when they write about him, they always say he comes from behind. But that was actually his strategy. It wasn't like he couldn't keep up. Yeah, and then because he knew he had that foot speed, so regardless of what distance they were in front of him, when he takes that last turn, it's a wrap. He is done, and he's going to win. And he had another interesting story along the way. When he actually was going to run at Navy, and when he was running at Navy, he wasn't allowed to run, and one of the other track guys you would come to know as Gerald Ford was like, if John Woodruff is not running, neither am I. So President Gerald Ford and John Woodruff would leave the race. And President Ford, he was a young, I don't know, he's maybe 21, 22, however, he was like, I'm out. If we're going to play he can't run, then I don't want to run if I'm not running against the best. So John Woodruff had a lot of wonderful stories, and obviously he was a World War II veteran and retired. So, yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you all for your wonderful questions. Thank you for sharing your history and insight. And please stick around for the next film. One of my initial questions was, how did you connect all the characters? How did you get in touch with these characters? Because, I mean, every single one of the children that are highlighted in the movie are amazing. So I'm wondering, how did you find out about them to get their story?
Finding stories were like very interesting, because I remember when I first had the idea to make a film about the new generation doing things, I found a sponsor in Brazil. And he said, Marcos, I can support you on that, but let me ask you something. Do you have already all the stories? And I say, kind of, but I didn't have any story yet. So I think the process was very magical. We went around the world depending of these encounters, of finding them and connecting, and it was very easy. It was very easy to find the stories. I think editing and putting together was much more difficult, but finding the stories were very easy. And it was interesting because every time we find a new group of kids, they ask, Marcos, who are the other kids? What are they doing? I want to know them. So the film somehow started building these bridges between different kids doing different things in different countries. And yeah, it was kind of interesting sharing with them the other kids' stories and seeing how they react when they see each other, and they can learn and get inspired and want to help them. And yeah, it was a beautiful process.
I can imagine. I mean, it seemed like they had so much in correlation with each other through the whole film. It's like they were doing the same things in different parts of the world, which was super impactful. I'm wondering, how long did it take you to shoot this?
It was almost 3 years, because in 1 year and a half we found, let's say, 15, 16 stories, and in the second phase we found many children working with youth journalism, and they call themselves journalists, reporters like the Indians. And we spent another year sharing everything we filmed with these journalist kids in 5 different countries. This is going to be more in the series. We could not bring everything to the feature film. But in the whole process was like 3 years filming. Yeah.
Wow, it was well worth it. So I see that we're going to open up Q&A also. It's going to be on the hour right here, just so you can prepare your questions if you have any. You did a lot of traveling in the film, and to some, for what we would say some dangerous places from what we know in the news and everything. What are some safety measurements that you take when you're traveling abroad and filming in these places?
Actually, we didn't do any preparation for safety and everything. We always try to work with locals to gather a local crew. So they know better what we can do, what we cannot. We have some hard moments in Africa, in Lebanon, but I think the energy of the kids helped us a lot, and everything went so easy and flowed very well. We never had any issues. Yeah.
That's interesting. And I'm a camera geek, so I'm wondering, it was a beautiful image. What camera did you shoot on It
was a 4K camera, Sony F55.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a kind of big camera for this project because we had to travel so much and carry around, but you work at the end.
Absolutely. Do we have any questions from the audience?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I don't need a mic. First of all, I just want to say the work is phenomenal and just incredible. These stories, and these are child activists. So I'd like to hear you talk a little bit about what is beyond the film. How will this help connect these child activists in all these different sites? What are they doing? Is there some? There obviously is a movement. There are movements of movements. So can you just talk a bit about how the film can be used for activism among these children?
Yeah, I think our idea was always to make a movie that could help to start a movement. But I think this can happen very organically in the moment that we start bringing this to the internet, to the social media, for TV, and spreading bringing the series also. I think it's very motivating for them when they see others working in many different causes, and they say, oh, I thought it was difficult, but maybe I can join this group, maybe I can start working with them. And what we try to do in the movie also is to film many different causes, because we know that every child or every youth, they have a different talent. Not everyone wants to protect the environment, or each one of us have a different talent and can use different tools. So that's why to bring so many different causes in the film, from social to environment, so spirituality to arts. So everyone can find its own group and find out their own way of contributing. But we also want to create, after the series, an educational platform. They can be brought to schools and universities where we can watch each one of the stories, and we have 25 right now, and more are coming. And we're going to be able to connect with those organizations, with the characters. We can have like lesson guides helping them, the step-by-step, how we can bring tools to help them to take action. Because I think the movie is working in the sense of inspiring, but how we bring tools to help the audience to take actions. And this, I think, is the trickiest part. And we are building things in this direction, like an educational platform, the series, and all the social media around that can made easier for them to get to know each other and connect. Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions from the audience? Yes, ma'am. We're gonna go here. Go here first. We'll go to you second. Okay. Okay.
So it's nice to know that you're continuing with this, and what the children are doing is certainly wonderful, even when they said just giving them hope. But I guess I was thinking how they must be concerned of getting to the root of the problem. So giving Christmas presents to children in the slum is nice, but wouldn't it be nice to give them housing? Wouldn't it be nice to build a wall or a well and they get fresh water? And, so sort of thinking children, just like adults, we can't do it by ourselves. They need to connect with governments, they need to lobby. So I was just wondering if you also inject, that they can't do it on their own.
It's true.
To get to the root of the problem.
It's true. Some of the stories that we found that are not in the feature film are kids working the political level. They are mostly activists, and some of them are doing really, really great. We see right now Greta, the girl who is like pushing all the governments and everything. What I feel also is that those kids, they are getting older, and they are really motivated to keep doing what they do, but in a higher level. So once they are coming out from their community work and being able to go to colleges and universities and get proper education and building a bigger network, they're going to be able to expand and do it in a larger and more effective way. But what I think is so special in these kids is that they are able to understand what is wrong in their community and start making a difference in their community, and creating a real change in their community. So I believe that each one of us working in a micro level, the change can be very big. So, but along the process, we found all kind of projects and all kind of kids, if I can say kids, but from working from something very small to something very big, and I think this is the magic of the thing. How can I do something in my community, in my city, in my country? And doesn't need necessarily to be something global or something that is gonna. Every small change is important, so they can connect and help each other in a larger scale. But I think once the stories come out, and because I feel that a lot of kids and youth, they want to do something and they don't know how. But when they find out that there's many different ways and we can use our individual talent and the tools they have around them to start doing something, it's already the beginning of the process. And we hope the movie helps also this process to move on.
And I believe it will. You had a question here?
I have like two questions. Number one, you said it took like years to do them. How many children did you see and record?
We filmed with thousands and thousands of kids. Yeah, was thousands. Was very easy. Was very difficult to even choose the stories to put in the feature, or even to make all the individual stories, because we found so much things. I think we filmed with over 3,000 kids. I mean, not individually, but for example, in Africa, we involved the 300 kids. Photographing, making music, the music video at the end. In some countries were like very small, but it was a huge group of kids. I think more than 2,000 or 3,000 that we met along the process.
That's okay. That's okay. I have a question for you. What's next?
Right now, we're going to release the series. The Child of Nature is still in festivals. Actually, we are just in the beginning of the festivals. In the middle of the year, we're going to come with the series, and then the educational platform. So my mind is still very much on this project, and I don't know what we're going to do next, because I feel there's still a lot of work ahead to bring the movie to a larger audience and the series and everything.
Okay, great. We got one more question.
So you said you plan on releasing this within this year. Is there any site that we can follow so we can see when it's released and also find those educational materials that it's going to be released on?
Oh yeah, there is the childofnature.com. That is the major website. And Child of Nature on Facebook also. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am?
If they send a message to the website, we can connect with the different projects. But once we release the educational platform, everything is going to be there and super easy to reach out to them. But right now, we are doing this bridge. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am? Go ahead. No, you're good.
Yeah, that's a very good question. The inspiration? I'm going to try to make this very quick, this answer. But 15 years ago, I made a film in Brazil about a group of kids who lived in a very, very difficult area, and they are taking all the garbage and the pollution that they're facing their community and recycling and transforming in arts. We made a small film, a short film about that. And the film started going to festivals, and we start receiving a lot of emails saying, Marcos, how can we help these kids? And we discussed, I don't know, we are filmmakers and we are not an NGO, but we realized that the documentary films could be a very powerful tool for social change in the communities that we filmed. And we had the idea to do something bigger. So that's why we came with the idea to film in different countries with all kinds of kids, with different causes, so we can give visibility and voice to them and help them to get support. So I think that was the biggest motivation, to give them visibility and help them to find sponsors and support and help and everything.
That's a great question. We have one back here.
Yeah, thank you for such a beautiful film. My question was, have you been able to show the film to any of the kids that are part of it?
Yeah, we are in this process. Most of them already saw the movie. Some of them, they're able to come with us in few festivals. So we are trying our best to bring them to the events, to bring them to the festivals. And few of them didn't see yet, but they will in the next few months. The film is going to Europe and to Asia, and every time we go to a different location, we bring the kids that are part of that region.
That's amazing.
I was also wondering, like, if you're following the kids, like, going forward, each of the stories, like, are you gonna go back and talk to them in, like, a year or 2 years as they get older and see how their activism now has affected their future activism?
Yeah, we are trying our best to be following them. I think we kind of create a big family in this process. We became super friends and very close. And they are also connected. We are working to make sure that they can collaborate with each other and get to know each other. So we've been connecting with them a lot. So some of them is still doing great, and their projects are even bigger now. Some of them are changing the course of being mentors of other kids, but they are all in the same focus of helping the world to be a better place.
That is amazing. Speaking of collaboration, the song at the end, it seemed like it meshed all the cultures together. So that was a very nice touch.
Thank you. Just a quick story about that final music video. I found that project in Africa because I was working with the photographers, and they told Marcos, there is another project here. The kids, they sing rap songs. And I met them, I say, oh, that's amazing. Why you guys don't make a original music for the film? And then they told me, yeah, Marcos, I'm going to book a recording studio for us to go. I say, no, first you guys write the lyrics, then you practice. When you're ready, we can go to the studio. No, we don't do like that here. We're going to book 3 hours in the studio. And they didn't have music, anything. So say, okay. So in the first hour, they wrote the lyrics. The second hour, they record. In the third hour, I was going away with my flash drive, everything ready.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
Very talented.
We can get another round of applause. We thank you for creating such impactful
Thank
work.
you.
Thank you for
for
coming
the
to Morehouse.
invitation. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.